Welcome to our asynchronous tasks, our final lecture content for 2023. Jonathan has put together a PowerPoint that we expect you to make your way through in your own time. There is some additional activities as well that you may like to complete that link to some readings that have been included within the unit. And so take your time to go through those as a bit of a summary of your learnings. And this video is some practical tips and revisions of the things that we have covered and those that we didn't get time to as yet. So all the best with that and enjoy. Welcome to our asynchronous session and our final chat through GameSense model, and also we'll touch on some other aspects of PE teaching as well that you may wish to apply in your future practice. We'll start off with the CPEP unit. It was touched upon early in the course when you weren't working with me. So sport education and physical education. Again, most of the approaches that we have touched on in this unit are heavily student-centred, and we've explored all of the benefits of those and obviously applied that to the Victorian curriculum and seen how you can fulfil a broad range of content descriptors from the Victorian curriculum via these sorts of approaches. So in a sport education unit, the students are given different roles, and you can choose to either do a sport that students may be highly familiar with or not familiar with at all. I've tried both approaches, and in the lower levels it works really well to do a sport that they are familiar with, and in secondary higher levels it will work fine to do a sport that they're not so familiar with. For example, European handball, or even touch rugby or touch football if you haven't explored that in your curriculum too much. So the students are given that responsibility, but you are definitely not sitting back and taking it easy throughout these lessons. It's student well-being and support is of paramount importance during these units. So your coaches, you need to make sure that they are being supported by their students in their group that they are working with, and also that the coaches are respecting the students and not taking advantage of their newfound responsibility as a coach or teacher of the sports and activities. This CPEP unit requires a lot of pre-planning by you, so you will have a full folder of information or an online setup that you will provide students access to, and whether they are a scorer, timetabling, in charge of timetabling for your round robin events, whatever that may be, all of that documentation you will have prepared beforehand, unless you're making it part of the unit that the students have to collaborate and work together to pull together the whole thing. It does require a lot of teacher involvement, but the outcomes that you can comment on in your reports are numerous. Absolutely love CPEP from even about grade 5, 6 in primary school, and then I know you're all working in secondaries or will be working in secondary. Definitely a wonderful unit for that. Build in a whole lot of fun to it too, so they can come dressed up and theme their teams, and that is all student-centred and the students would have ownership of that. Teaching games for understanding, and we know that GameSense games are a little less structured than TGFU. So yes, they are very similar, but GameSense games, we have that question play model that we have explored. So inquiry-based learning in action, let's have a look at that with an example. And I've just got some kids' toys as my equipment, as my example here for this next activity. So the first thing that we can look at is the identification of the problem or the challenge. What is the challenge that you're wanting the students to solve, or the problem that you want them to solve? So there's a wonderful game called Juluhaya, which is a Yolunga game, and you can find that on the Yolunga game resource page on the Australian Sports Commission. The modification of this, which is based off the traditional game, but the way that I put this into action in my classrooms is I provide my students with 4 pool noodles. So I have an example of 2 here, and then they get 3 ping pong balls or tennis balls, something that if they step on it, it's not going to be an ankle twisting sort of hazard. So a hard cricket ball would not be appropriate, for example. And they have the balls on top of their pool noodles, and the aim of Juluhaya is collaboration and teamwork to move the balls along the pool noodles, which is not obviously what was traditionally used, like so. This is the problem. Well, that is the problem. That is the challenge. Then we would present that to the students. So we'd present that problem to the students, and then we would assist them to explore that. So you may give them some time to say, okay, well, this is our challenge. This is our pool of equipment. I have 4 pool noodles and I have three balls, and somehow I need to get from side A of the basketball court to side B. How, as a team of 3, are we going to do that? And then you would pause and give them a moment to explore that. Initially, I would not be actually assisting them to explore. I would be leaving them to explore that independently. Again, this is great for all ages. If you have a think about when it could be a really good game to use, it could be on a school camp type thing at the start of the year when students are getting to know each other. So that could be a good time to put this game into place. So we've allowed them to explore the problem. Then we give them a go at it. So give them a go at doing Jula higher and seeing how they go with their suggestion, and seeing also how they go listening to their peers. If their solution didn't work in that play phase, can they change their solution and try and adopt it to be more successful? So you allow them to go through that play phase. Then you might ask for a demonstration. So one group may have solved the problem by sitting, and you've probably come up with your own ideas as you're watching. So we might be working in as a 2 to hold the pool noodles. I might hold this end, another student on this end, and another student could come around and be at this end with the 2 pool noodles ready to collect the balls as they move along. Then the person at the far end may come along to the other end of the pool noodles here, and that teamwork and collaboration would continue end over end over end until they have moved the balls to the far side of the basketball court. There is a number of different ways to solve the challenge. So asking for demonstrations so that students could see how there is multiple ways to solve that challenge or that problem that you initially gave them, and then having an evaluation and a discussion of that, and then allowing them to play again. So the play, question, play model comes into play there. And it's just a beautiful game that does build that collaboration and teamwork aspect as well. So that's one example, GameSense model of the play, question, play approach, and that inquiry-based questioning. So just to review, you'd identify the problem, ask the students to try and solve a movement challenge or a problem, then present that to them, assist them to explore it or allow them to explore it, then assist them and give them time to identify and refine solutions through that play phase, and then have the demonstration part where they can analyse the success of other groups, and they may just want to try to refine the solution that they explored as well. Let's explore a target game now, because in our last session we worked on our unit planning, so we didn't get to explore target games in detail. Target games do often have that element of risk-taking behaviour, as far as I might take a risk and try and go all in on one target, or there's a whole lot of different ways that you can approach and think about target games. The one I've got set up behind definitely has that element to it. So you will see a brown pillow at the front, a white pillow behind that, there, and then the hula hoop behind that. So the hula hoop is going to be worth 3 points. The white pillow will be worth 2, and the brown pillow will be worth 1. So the problem that the students have to solve, or the challenge that they accept with this game, with this target game, is that it is the first group to 12 points. So the first group to 12 points is the goal of the challenge, and when one group gets to 12, then we stop the game and reset. So you would present that and allow students to explore what their decision is going to be. They will be working individually for this activity, but they can discuss it in pairs about, or pair and share about what their approach is going to be. How do they want to start? How do they want to go in the middle? And how do they want to go towards the end? Do they want to start off going for 3 points and move to 2 and then move to 1? Or do they want to get a few points on the board first by going for the 1-pointers and then trying to get some risk-taking behaviour and go for the 3s further on? So hopefully you can see how that game would work there. But again, they would have the ball or whatever it may be. It doesn't have to stay and land on it. It has to hit it on the full to be counted as 1 point. So that would be 1 point if it hit that brown pillow on the full, or if it hit the white pillow on the full, that would be 2 points. Or if it hit the hula hoop, it would be 3 points if it hit that on the full first up. So again, it is, and Finska is a brilliant game to do with your students, secondary school. It's a recreational game, that's something that's available in the community. Kmart has a knockoff version of it that's much cheaper than the Swedish version. But that's another brilliant target game that requires skill, but it's also a game of chance a little bit too. So, and it is a tactics thing. You can work in teams for that, Finska. And we actually do that as an inter-school sport for our primary school students, but it is a much loved game with your secondary students, and we have kits of that, full sets of that in our high school, 6 sets of Finska sets, so that it can be set up as a whole class thing. So again, if you're not the most sporty and skilled student, but you can do an underarm throw, a risk taker who says, I want to try and win on my next turn, and they go for it and they knock down, 5 Finska pins, but they were already on a score of 46, the goal of Finska is to get to 50 points, then they get to 51, that means they have to go all the way back to 25. So it's a slow and steady and tactical and thinking person's game, as much as it is a game of skill. One last suggestion that I wanted to share with you was doing a cooking up your own game style activity with your students. So in that they can explore not only what makes a great game, but what makes a great team and a great member of the team. So you can unpack a little more of the affective elements and the cognitive thinking, in addition to the skill via this sort of approach as well. There was a creative PE book and exploration of this model by John Key and Jackie Peters. You may be able to find at your school as well. As an example, say if we had all of this equipment that we were using before in our earlier example, and they were provided with a bucket of a kit of equipment that is the same for each group, but they need to, from those ingredients, those same ingredients, it's kind of like a mystery box challenge in MasterChef as an example. They would need to cook up a game, and the parameters for the game may be that it has to have a level of engagement, so not a whole lot of standing around, and needs to be enjoyable and fair. That might be the starting point that you provide. So again, there's a lot of student agency and choice in where they take it from there. You're providing the ingredients, but what they actually create is up to them. There is more information that you can find online to support you. If you think about that as a cooking up your own game type thing, that's a great suggestion that you could bring to your department and do with your future students as well. I really hope that you've got a lot out of this unit as a whole, and that you can apply some of this. It does take a little bit of courage to be a graduate teacher going into a department that's maybe been established for a long period of time, and to add some suggestions that you think may add value to the curriculum as a whole and to the students. And it may be, I remember starting with just suggesting a CPEP unit and being just allowed to introduce that one thing in the first year or two of my teaching, and then that became something that was picked up by the department, and that was in quite a small school that had I was given sheets that I could tell hadn't been updated as lesson plans for many years. So the change can be slow, but just be patient with that, because you'll be able to learn a lot from the teachers that you're working with, no doubt, and take the positives and then try and work out how to improve areas where you think the students could get more value from that. Assessments, just to touch on that, because I know that not everyone was there when I went through assessments. We have different forms of assessment. So assessment for learning, when you come into the school, particularly say at year 7, you're coming in, the students don't know the school and what's expected as far as their standards, and you don't know the level that the students are at. So assessment can be for learning. How am I going to plan my learning if I don't know where my students are at? That's called diagnostic or diagnosing, if you think of it in that way. I'm diagnosing where my students are at. Assessment as learning. Things like, corrective feedback, peer assessment, it can be, teacher assessment as well, but it's that assessment as they're learning to be able to provide that reflection on what they're doing and how they could improve that. And so that's as, and then there's of. So for, as, of, which is diagnostic for the first one. The one during learning is formative. So they're still forming their skills. You can think of it as that in that way. And then summative is the summary or done at the end of learning. Here's my thought for you on that. And I know from my experiences where things don't go well with this is that summative assessment is done on that particular unit. And say I was assessing my student for the overhand throw, and they were doing some elements of the overhand throw correctly, but maybe not following through across their body. And I wrote that in their report, I assessed that, but then do I give them a chance to actually go back and improve that so that doesn't become an ongoing error, and then something that they maybe get held back from playing with their friends because they don't have the power to play throwing the ball at the park. It doesn't have to be sport related, but we don't want our students to be held back because of lack of mastery of their fundamental movement skills, and that is our absolute key job. So an area for your consideration in your future teaching, when you do notice errors in your summative assessments with your students, think about how you can keep them on your radar so that when you're even doing warm-up games involving those skills in the future, remember to follow through across the body. Have that little summary on your iDocio, which is one of the apps that I'd suggested to you to use for your reporting, which is brilliant. You can have your rubrics loaded in there for your assessments. You can see the areas that they were still working towards, and you can flick back to that before you move on to the next areas. That is something that I discovered as an error of my teaching a long way into my teaching. So I'm just flagging it. I'm not expecting you to get it all right in your first year out in the school setting. So I hope that you have enjoyed the day to be able to do this learning at home. Jonathan's put together some wonderful slides, as was said, and activities for you online. There's some from past lecturers with some questions that you may wish to explore as well. But otherwise, I'm really looking forward to your presentations of your lessons straight in the gym for that, and I'll give you time to go get your equipment as well. Thanks for your time.